Shalom Mishpacha, Rabbi Esther here with a small sanctuary, and I just wanted to do a brief check-in because I've been away from the channel for a while. I'm doing well, I'm fine, but I needed to take a little time away with everything going on both in my professional life and my personal life, and in full disclosure also kind of processing this post-October 7th reality and the Israel-Gaza war. Spiritually and emotionally, this has been a really difficult time. We have to acknowledge that this has been an extraordinarily difficult time and continues to be an extraordinarily difficult time for the peoples of the region and the peoples in the diaspora as well. It has been a really hard time in the Jewish community, and that is not the only story of this conflict, but it's the story that I am living in and that I am trying to serve my people as best as I can, to support my people as best as I can, and provide moral guidance locally to my own community on the matter of this conflict. I started my channel wanting to contribute positively to Jewish content creation. I wanted to model Jewish joy. It was even the theme of the high holidays at my synagogue, and really create a kind of a Jewish space that was vibrant and inclusive and welcoming and joyful and centering on the many self-empowering and positive experiences of living a Jewish life. That mission for my channel hasn't really changed at all. I still intend on doing that. But I did notice that as I was creating content in the post-October 7th reality, it became harder and harder for me to do so. The guiding ethic of my Jewish faith and spirituality and my sense of belonging to the Jewish people is this idea that we transmute trauma into empathy. I actually think that it is the core teaching of Al Tano et Hager, Ki Gerim Haytem Be'eretz Mitzrayim, do not oppress the stranger, for you were strangers in Egypt. This commandment is repeated in the Torah time after time, 36 times in total. And I think what the Torah is asking us to do is something that runs counter to human nature and is actually extraordinarily difficult, but also of extraordinary importance. And that is to both inhabit our own suffering and trauma, the historical or personal experiences that we may have had as human beings or as the Jewish people, but also transcend and transmute that suffering and trauma into empathy and solidarity with both the vulnerable specifically and the human family at large. And this is my guiding ethic, that I care about the loss of civilian life and the deprivations that civilians on all sides of this conflict have been contending with. We can all take a step back and look at the cost of human life and suffering that this war has taken, and as a person of faith who believes that every human being is created in the image of the divine, that has weighed and continues to weigh very heavily on my heart. And I just found that under those circumstances, it became harder and harder for me to create joyful and vibrant Jewish content. And I noticed that as I was holding the needs of my own community and the needs of my own family and my own spiritual needs, I needed to pull back for a bit. But I wouldn't be a rabbi if I didn't try to turn this into a teaching moment, of course. And that is that it's really imperative for all of us to take good care of ourselves when we are facing prolonged stress or prolonged exposure to violence and conflict, even if it is by proxy through social media and traditional media coverage. The images that we are all processing are so much more direct, violent, and intrusive through the devices in our lives. And while I'm not a psychologist, I do think that we are asking our brains and our souls to process more than we are set up to do as human beings. And so in that light, I do have a book recommendation. And the book recommendation is actually about Jewish intergenerational trauma and the process of trauma, but it's also about universal human trauma, and actually does also talk about the conflict in the Middle East. The book was written a few years ago by a rabbi who's also a psychoanalyst, Rabbi Firestone, and it is called Wounds into Wisdom: Healing Jewish Intergenerational Trauma. And this book, throughout this period, has offered me a lot of support and guidance, and I think it's incredibly valuable. As for reliable sources on the conflict itself, obviously that's really difficult, because whatever source you choose, you basically end up enforcing some kind of perspective and potentially some kind of a bias. But I will recommend one, which is the Ezra Klein podcast. Ezra Klein is a reporter and a podcaster who works for the New York Times, and he has done a series of long form episodes about the conflict with Israelis, with Palestinians, with experts, both from the Israeli and the Palestinian side. The series as a whole really balances things out really beautifully and has pushed me to think more deeply, to feel more empowered and more informed. And I will, of course, link those two sources down below. Of course, I will be back. I realize that I have one more session to do in my 3-part session on identity, belonging, and meaning. We have already done identity and belonging in the Jewish community, and we still have to do meaning, which is basically the episode about covenant. And I will get that done, so stay tuned for that. And I do look forward to doing a whole bunch of episodes, a series on conversion. So I don't really have a timeline for that yet. I want to ease my way back in. I've been very burnt out with everything that's been going on these last few months, but that is definitely going to be on the radar. But I just wanted to check in with you guys. I've missed you. I'm glad you're still subscribed. I'm glad I'm still getting new subscribers despite the lack of activity for a while on the channel. And I'm glad that I was able to take this time away, basically just kind of finding my way in this new reality that also prompts in me really deep thinking and contemplation about how I want to live out my Jewish life in the world. So thank you for being with me today, and I look forward to checking in with you guys real soon. And shalom uvracha, with peace and blessings from my bite to your bite.